Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rutherford County Board of Education. Our first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join Mr. Jim Estes, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. We would request that the audience join the board in a moment of silence, and tonight calling attention to the family of Fran Bowen. Fran's father, Joe Armstrong, passed away a few days ago. Fran works in our HR department. If you would join the board in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Reminding the audience, we have a number of people here tonight, and welcome. Always glad to have someone here. Remind you that we had a work session the night before last. We have already discussed many of these things that are on here, and the first of which is the approval of the agenda. If there are no questions on that, I need a motion to approve that, please.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. A second.
Second.
Mr. Hodge, thank you. Any comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Approval of the consent agenda is the next item, and I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Young, thank you. A second?
Second.
Mr. Estes, thank you. Any comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next order of business is visitors. Do we have visitors tonight, Ms. Michaels? No visitors, okay. Mr. Director? We've got a couple of minutes, well, one introduction, I know.
Right, we introduced Ms. Lauren Bush, staff attorney, the other evening, who's sitting over here to her right. And I have, also tonight, would like to introduce Dr. Kelly Chastain, who is our 912 science specialist. She did work along with Mr. Estes once upon a time. I know at Oakland High School, but again, Dr. Chastain has background certainly in science. She worked some with the State Department when we're looking at science standards and some of the things that's being looked at. So she's a real asset that has somebody that was involved with some of the development and the understanding of what's going on. Hearing very good things from high school principals now. Science is 1/3 of our accountability piece. So it's high stakes in science now with English language arts and mathematics and science. So welcome, Dr. Chastain. We're fortunate to have you. Thanks.
Okay, number 8.
Number 8 is a presentation this evening about school discipline policy reform, and Mr. Jake Arning from Blackman High School. And he's a student at Blackman. Mr. Arning.
Hello, thank you for having me here tonight. I am Jake Arning. I'm a senior at Blackman High School and a part of the Blackman Collegiate Academy. The reason I'm in front of you tonight is in our collegiate program, we are, as seniors, required to do a capstone project. And that project encompasses over our summer, junior to senior year, to research a topic that we find important to our Blackman community and that can help the Blackman High School and greater community around us. I chose to do school discipline policy reform and have studied the past 3 decades of what we have come to know as modern school discipline policy and see what works and what the nation has done as a whole to look at that and to reflect upon that in our own school discipline policy and figure out how we can improve that for our school body and for the administration. So a little background on the research that I did. In the 1990s, we see a rise in school violence in the extreme form and in standard bullying, and Congress passes the Congressional Gun-Free Schools Act, which requires a 1-year calendar suspension for any child that brings a gun on campus. That starts a trend in zero-tolerance policies around the nation that becomes prevalent in all our schools around the nation to have a zero-tolerance policy. In the 2000s, schools start to shift away from that. We have research that shows prison to school or school to prison pipeline, where children that are in contact with law enforcement get a little bit less on the path to continuing their education. Their chances of continuing to post-secondary education and continuing even their high school education plummet greatly. In 2010s, we finally kind of figure out what our answer is to that: rehabilitative policies. We, as a nation, start shifting towards peer and student review councils for discipline, different ideas for rehabilitative programs that shift away from the punitive policies of the past. And so what I have done is looked at our own policy. And the main thing that I've found is that we have a discipline procedure in our student handbook that I felt that we should review and propose changes on that. My changes are to give us an incremental discipline policy as something that a student can work through and maybe have a chance to have a second chance in school discipline, and I'll get into that in the next slide. So if y'all will open your little packets to the first page, you'll see the red in your packet is changes that I have made. If it's red underlined, that means that I put it in there. If it's red crossed out, that means I nicked it out of that section. The main change that I made at the very beginning is looking at what we give guidance to our administration, the principal and their designee, how they should approach a school discipline infraction, what attitude they should do with that, and to give them a step back in the instructions to look at it holistically and look at what the child's record is to determine what punishment they should do. And so moving down into the levels, in our district we have 4 levels of misbehavior. I did not touch any of the definitions for those levels because I think that they were strong and I think they fit what they should be, though my main changes came in what was included in those levels. So if you flip through a little bit on those, you can see that I have crossed out mainly level 2 misbehaviors and moved some of them into level 1. And so what I'm looking at is our definitions of it, are minor misbehaviors on the part of a student which impedes orderly classroom procedures. And so looking at each definition of each level and seeing if what we had in there already appropriately fit that. And then, in hand, going to our procedures. As you see on the lower level tiers, I've added in a referral to a counselor if appropriate or necessary in how an administrator should face a disciplinary problem. That is in another step that we can take to help with that intervention on a child's school disciplinary track. If you also see on the lower levels, we have corporal punishment, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension taken out on the lower 2, definitely. My goal in an incremental disciplinary process is that a child will be able to work through. So your child that, let's say, is caught lying in class, that child will be sent to the administrator like in the old system, but instead of the administrator having free will to give that child whatever punishment they can, it is limited into a smaller, less punitive measures to where we can work through that, and if the child continues on that track, then of course it will move up through the levels. If you see in the higher categories, not much is changed, especially level 4. Zero tolerance is state and federal laws that have to stay intact and that are usually appropriate for that level with direct harm to the child or the school body as a whole, and therefore I have kept them where they should be, and not many changes were made to that in any way. So, to help y'all kind of understand what I'm getting at, I have 2 example cases up on the board for you. So my first one is what we would call a successful intervention on a child's disciplinary track. So let's say Tim says an obscenity to Sally, which of course is against school policy, and so he would be referred to an administrative official for a discipline sentencing. Let's say he gets detention and also is sent to talk to his counselor to see why he chose that as his course of action. Tim thankfully realizes that he doesn't want to keep going on that track and has that second, less harsh punishment to take a step back and go, hey, I made a mistake and that I need to change that. But also, the policy works like the original one, but incrementally. So Bob did the same thing as Tim. Same punishment, But Bob does not continue in his life in a corrective behavior, but continues with his less savory behavior as Tim did originally. He continues to harass Sally and is eventually sent to ISS, and then continues his behavior again and sent to OSS. So Bob was given the chance to look back on his mistakes, but did not clearly receive them as Tim did, which allows the administration to keep kids going through the system, but giving them a chance at each step to take a look back and maybe stop before the ultimate, punishment is doled out. Give me 1 second. So, my next thing. If you flip past the first policy sheet, you'll see after level 4 misbehaviors, definitions, suspensions, and if you flip past that one page, there's one red highlighted area. The language that I included in our suspension section of our disciplinary handbook is to just support the new procedural system that I'm proposing. If we look at this language, that is directly taken out of what is in corporal punishment. In corporal punishment, we include the language that after other less stringent measures have failed. So giving our administrative officials a cue in the language that we need to take a step back from the harsher punishments and maybe look and see what other alternatives we can send a child into to maybe correct their behavior. The effects that this will have on the district and individual schools on their own, we want, the goal of this is to keep kids in the structured environment. If you send a kid in OSS, that kid is no longer under our eyes as a district, as a school, as an administration. That kid is not going to, in OSS, to find other valedictorians out there. He's going to find the other kids that were sent out of school and continue down either an illegal behavior path or an unsavory behavior path, which would not help them proceed in their secondary education goals or even finishing high school. So keeping that child within our structured environment and for at least 7 hours a day, trying to keep them on the straight and narrow and maybe be able to connect with them enough to where they'll correct their behavior. Also, giving kids a second chance. Not every kid that makes a bad decision is a bad kid. We're all teenagers, and teenagers are renowned for making stupid decisions, and even the best of us are able to not always be on the straight and narrow 24/7. And so giving those kids that are only going to make one mistake and it finally hits them, that they need to stop that behavior and take a step back, trying to get to those kids and making sure that we don't put a blemish on their record of OSS or ISS that stays on your disciplinary record for the rest of their high school career. Also, the new state legislature of the Every Student Succeeds Act will be taking into account attendance into the grading of the district and the school, and that includes OSS. So as a district wanting to reflect a positive score and make sure that we look the best we can to the state, as a district we need to look at other options and look how we can proceed as a district to maybe keep those children in school and not send them out and keep those scores up. Some of the ways that we can do that, make counselors pivotal in the discipline process. Our counselors are a great resource. They know how to talk to kids. They are around them 24/7. Sometimes, we do not know what's going on in a child's home and what is leading to their disciplinary behaviors, and maybe all they need is somebody to talk to and to hear them out, and maybe that will get them on the path that will continue their educational career. The implementation of a remedial program to remove OSS and ISS from disciplinary records. An implementation of this program could possibly put those kids that are at greatest risk an incentive to correct their behavior. Because if a kid has that black mark on their record and no way to get it off, well, why stop there? Why should they correct their behavior in any form or fashion? But if we set up a program to where they're put on a track to where they keep good grades and a good discipline, that can improve scores and improve attendance. The formation of faculty and peer discipline review boards around the nation, school districts have implemented this idea as a more jury-formed way of reviewing discipline policy and children that make infractions. Contacting successful school boards are a great great idea. Moving into this new age to where we're going to have to think about this more often, there are plenty of people that have gone through the trial and error that we don't have to. If we contact those school boards that have been successful, we don't have to go through that rough patch of figuring out what works and what doesn't. And that can be a great asset for us as a school district. If y'all have any questions, I will be happy to take any of those. Any clarifications?
I've got one.
Okay,
Go back to your first example.
first example.
The students were given, well, one student decided that he had done wrong
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to, that works great.
Yeah.
The part of that may give us a problem was the student that we spend the time to do that with, then we have to spend the time again with them.
The allotting of resources to a child that's not going to fix themselves.
Right.
I believe that's a legitimate concern. We have a finite amount of counselors, we have a finite amount of administration that spend that time to fix those children. But I also believe as a district, it should be in our hearts to try at least, and maybe not to the full extent that that example gives, but at least try to intervene in some form or fashion. If it's not, all those steps combined together, but at least give them one chance to look back. Now, if Bob did a level 3 misbehavior or a level 4 misbehavior, of course, we skip that because those infractions are serious enough to warrant the punishment. But for Bob saying an obscenity to Sally, at least that first round, we should give them some chance to look back and maybe reflect on that.
The only problem I see with that is the assistant principals that mostly deal with the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
If the student doesn't do what they're supposed to, that's going to take up their last minute of the day to take care of it.
Yeah.
Now, the guy that says, well, I did wrong and let's straighten it out, we're ahead on that one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just something we need to look at. I like the idea.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Arning, let me kind of, you're on track with the way things are going in Tennessee and my own, with the rest of the country, just a thing or two. You're correct, out-of-school suspensions count as chronic absentee days. Our principals are looking at discipline procedures and for their handbooks and all, that maybe this infraction would have been a 3-day automatic out-of-school suspension. They're looking at would 2 days do as well, or 1 day, or whatever. So they're revisiting that, with some of the chronic absentee thing. We're looking at ways that kids that go to our alternative school, is there a way we can get those students back more quickly? Students that go to Rutherford County alternative schools, we kind of using a euphemism, we put the ball back in their court. And it's a point system that you get to earn your way back into the school by certain behaviors, doing your homework and that sort of thing. So we have a committee of principals looking at that. Your principal is one of the ones on that committee. Dr. Justice is back there tonight, so she's a part of that. We're looking at a way, can we expedite that return? Also this morning, each Wednesday, directors across the state of Tennessee receives a communication from the Commissioner of Education. And on the edition that came last night, there was actually 2 items in her announcement thing about 2 state trainings dealing with student discipline. One of them is restorative justice, which is very similar to some of the things that you're talking about. The other one dealt with other disciplinary matters. So the state has become very proactive in providing additional training to school administrators and people about how to look at these discipline issues, and is there another way to deal with it. So you're very much on track, and thank goodness Tennessee seems to be heading that same direction.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I see some of you flipping in the back. My research paper is in the back if you want to test my salt on if I did my homework or not. It's a bear if you're going to read it, but hopefully it's a good read.
I'm curious as to what led you to take up this topic.
So we have a summer boot camp our junior year, that we have to come back 2 days to school, which of course we all love greatly, and we're told to pick a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. And so I want to go into law and eventually go through political science and then get a law degree after that. So that very much interests me in the policy. And in my freshman year, I was Tim. I got in an altercation with a child my freshman year where I defended myself, and due to the zero tolerance policy as it was written, I received 3 days OSS. And so I believe that as a child that we need to give those kids that chance to really take a step back and think, to give them that chance to get maybe that smudge off their record and to really show who they are, and maybe that one mistake not define them throughout their high school career.
In your research, were you able to find any other areas outside of school discipline where rehabilitative practices have been effective?
I mean, we can also look at, not the greatest comparison, but the prison system in America also, we try implementing plans of colleges coming in and giving prisoners degree, and point systems that give prisoners different access to different activities and privileges. So 2 government-run organizations that definitely vary in their goals, but when we look at discipline, we're definitely looking at a higher level and a lower level. Both are trying to take a new look at it.
I certainly am not inclined to put anything into the board policy this evening, but I am very impressed with the concept of a pathway to redemption. You have highlighted that even at the level 1 and level 2 offenses, that it is equally important. Mr. Odom has highlighted that we have that at our alternative schools as one of the ways that we work a student back into the standard academic environment. But you have raised an excellent point that pathway to redemption is valuable and effective even for minor offenses, because of students perhaps like yourself that may stumble only slightly but take such personal pride that they would like that mark, a pathway to be able to earn redemption on that mark as well. I commend your efforts. Excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank all of you. I'd like to thank my teacher mentor, Ms. Price, my professional mentor, Dr. Huddleston, Dr. Justice, and Ms. Bauman, and the rest of the Blackman administration for supporting me in my effort and helping me get through this. Thank you all.
Board, if there's no further questions, thank you, Mr. Arning.
Thank you.
Well done, sir. Number 9.
Number 9 is the introduction of our fine arts series, and presenting for us tonight is Ms. Lindsay Halford, who is our fine arts coordinator for Rutherford County Schools.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak this evening. I have to say that I was feeling pretty confident about myself, and then Mr. Arning came in here and had his PowerPoint presentation, and I thought, man, I need to step it up a little bit. So I was very impressed by that. Thank you. I'm just here tonight just to briefly introduce you to a new and exciting thing that we're starting this year across the district, which is the Rutherford County Schools Fine Arts Honor Series. You have an invitation and, of course, a sticker, because who doesn't love a sticker of our logo. And so I'm just going to briefly let you guys know what this is about and invite you to become a part of it. As you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, and it may sound a little self-serving, but we have some of the very best fine arts programs around here in Rutherford County Schools. I would put our teachers and the students and the programs that they put on up against any school district in the state in terms of quality. As examples, in 2016, RCS had 90 students selected for mid-state choir and 32 selected for all-state choir. That's more than any other school district in the state by far. So we are leading the state on that. We also had 153 students selected to mid-state bands and orchestras, and 24 of those were all-state members, and we rival larger school districts in the amount of students we send to those programs. We've had several music theater programs recognized at the Nashies Awards that take place in Nashville at TPAC. Many of our visual arts students are honored at the Winter Circle Awards at MTSU every year. So in short, we simply have outstanding programs. And this Fine Arts Honor Series that we're starting this year is a way that we as a district can encourage and honor those students who work so hard and show so much dedication to their artistic craft, and also create a district-wide community of artistic scholars. So what is this honor series? It's a 4-event series, and there's an event specifically for each of the 4 fine arts areas that we have here in our school. So there's an event for theater, an event for vocal music, an event for instrumental music, and an event for visual art. The series has 4 purposes. First, we want to celebrate the best of what we have in Rutherford County Schools. We want to showcase it. We know that we have amazing programs and incredibly talented students. We want to show them off, and we want to give them an honor. We want to honor their work. So it's a celebration. Secondly, we want to provide high-quality fine arts experiences for those students. As an example, at the theater event coming up in 2 weeks, we're having a college fair. We have several colleges coming in to talk to the students about scholarship opportunities and audition processes. They'll be able to audition and get feedback from college professionals. They'll be able to do listen to a panel discussion of college professors, attend workshops given by those professionals, and then they're going to have a showcase. So they get this wonderful educational component. The choir and band students are going to spend 2 days working with top-notch college conductors, some of which we're bringing in from out of state. One of our band conductors is one of the most highly acclaimed conductors and composers in the country right now. So we're very excited to bring those people in to work with our students. And the visual arts students will also have a chance to have their portfolios examined and given feedback by college professors. So they get a wonderful educational experience here. Third, we want to provide high-quality professional development. The teachers are going to come with the students, and while they're there, we're going to give them some PLC time to work together. We're going to bring in guest artists to teach our teachers and provide them with things that they can take back to their classrooms to benefit every student in the district. And fourth, we want to involve the community in the RCS Fine Arts activities by promoting the series. I know Mr. Evans and Mr. Cartwright are going to be doing a story about the series very soon. We want to have all the event performances free and open to the community to come and see what our students are doing. And we're also inviting local businesses to become sponsors of the events. A few more important details. Each event is going to be open to students from every middle and high school in the district. So this is going to truly be a district-wide thing. There's going to be a set of criteria that has been developed by our teachers, and our teachers are going to nominate their students based on who they think should go to these honor events. But every school will be represented at these events. Every event is going to feature at least one guest teaching artist to provide educational experience for students and professional development for teachers. This is kind of an innovative and different program. There is no other school district I know of that has an all-county theater event, period. And while some districts might have a band event or an art event, they usually occur in isolation, and we're trying to create a community. They're all under one large umbrella, and we can all celebrate each other. So the idea of the series is really kind of an innovative thing that RCS is leading the way on. And lastly, the events are going to be simply amazing because of the stats I told you earlier about how many kids we have that are excelling in their fine arts area. If you take the best from every school and put them together and put on a concert or a performance or an art show, it's going to be simply outstanding because of the level that we have within our district. So I just want to extend an invitation to all of you, to the administrators of Rutherford County Schools, to parents and students and anyone in the community who wants to cherish and support the arts, to come to these events and celebrate these students with us.
I'm sorry, Mr. Odom. Ms. Halpert, at what cost to the county taxpayers is all of this?
There is no cost to the county taxpayers because, as you can see on your invitations, we have sponsors, Nissan and Ascend, most notably, but also several local businesses and many in-kind donations. We're going to be able to feed the students and the teachers at the events, bring in all of these guest artists at no cost to the taxpayers because our local businesses are supporting this.
She won't toot her own horn, so I'll toot that for her. Who was the person that was instrumental in collecting and getting all of these grants? It was Miss Halford. And how much money have you had promised for this already in the printing and the producing and all of the things?
We have about $15,000 promised.
So forth. I'm very proud of her team's work, the things that she's done.
Thank you. Any questions from you all?
I just have a comment that I'd like to make and a question. First of all, thank you for all that you've done. I mean, we've had these conversations before. The arts are so important. And, you know, we've seen such a trend over recent years of school systems getting away from them because they don't have the funding and those kind of things. So thank you for all that you all have put into this. And I would just make a request of our chairman and our director to make sure that we don't have board meetings scheduled on any of those nights so that we're able to attend these. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Let's also want to make sure, if Mr. Evans doesn't already have it, because people may listen to us on TV or the internet tonight, and you know, you've read the dates, but we'll put it up there where it's visual. They can log into Rutherford County Schools and pick this up. So if you'll kind of find a way, Mr. Evans, if you haven't already done it, so that people can have a reference back to dates and times.
Sure, and Keith is working on something for next week to promote the first event, which is on November 2nd. He'll be with Ms. Hoffman getting that first one promoted, but definitely.
Other comments from any board members?
I just want to say that particularly that one on November 2nd, you will be amazed at what the theater productions can be. Last spring, I was able to see productions at 5 of our local high schools, and each one was just outstanding. The students are responsible not only for the characters on stage, but many, many times they're responsible for the wardrobe, for the props, for the backdrops. It is a comprehensive artistic effort, and it is something that is increasingly applicable to our local economy as film production becomes more and more of an event in this area. Myself, earlier this week, I was able to use one of the homes that my company builds, and they paid us quite a bit of money just to film a video commercial there at the home. Took them 3 days, and there were about 8 people from Nashville and about 40 people from Manhattan. And I asked the folks there, I said, how is this changing? And he said, every day the ratio is moving. More and more people from Nashville in this industry of filming and producing things, and that theater showcase is one not to miss.
Any other board member with comments? Thank you, Ms. Howell.
Thank you all.
Much appreciated. Number 10.
Number 10 is our textbook selection committees for adoption of textbooks on tab 2, of course, on your computer. The names and qualifications of the individuals are being submitted for appointment to the Science Instructional Materials Committee, the Health Instructional Materials Committee, and the Driver's Education Instructional Materials Committee for the 2017-2018 school year upon board approval. The list also includes parents and experts to serve on each respective committee. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve the appointments of the textbook selection committees as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hodge, thank you. Mr. Holliday, thank you. Any further comment other than to thank these people whose name appears on this list? This is a thankless job, and well, no, it's not, because I'm thanking you, so you can't be thankless, can you? It's very time-consuming. The director has reminded me, and I hope that we can appreciate these folks. Any further comment? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Number 11.
Number 11 is facilities, and which is on tab 3. Emergency cleaning and demolition of Riverdale High School fire damage concession stand. Russ Daly with Belfour USA Group has submitted a price for cleaning and demolition of the burnt-out concession stand at Riverdale High School. Belfour USA Group is contractually available through the State of Tennessee statewide contract. The title is SWC number 817, Emergency Services Contract number 000-35394. Both the insurance adjuster and the county risk management team recommended that we use Belfour since we have used them before. They are familiar with them and they are on the state contract. The cost for demolition, haul off, and disposal is $28,145.50, and the cleaning of smoke damage in the entire building is $4,238.19. Demolition will be down to the masonry at the top of the plate elevation. The cost is calculation from the state-approved cost index. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve Belfour USA Group for cleaning, demolition, and haul-off debris for the fire damage at Riverdale High School concession building for a total of $32,383.69 as presented with work to start immediately.
We discussed this last night, of course, at length, and we can discuss it as much as the board likes. Are there questions, comments for the director?
I do have one question. Thank you. We talked about the insurance and what coverage would be there for this, and something else I just thought of, I'm just curious about, because it's my understanding that the fire started, it was an accident, and certainly those kind of things can happen. But it begs the question for me, are our booster clubs, our sport booster clubs, do they carry any kind of liability insurance or anything for situations like this if something were to happen due to the actions or inactions of a booster club member?
You know, I don't think we require that now for those seeking, or correct, Mr. Sanders?
I think we may have required it for some extraordinary fundraising events that have been held, but as far as the normal operations of the booster clubs, no.
Okay.
We do the liability for people using our facilities, but that's a liability, not really that type of insurance, I don't believe. Right, Mr. Reed, there,
Like Ms. Moore says, it's not necessarily about assigning blame, but this does remind me of the continued need, and we hope to address this in our construction meeting next week, that we still are in need of concession space at the Smyrna and Laverne athletic fields, and that's something that we've been frustrated to try and get for 8 years now.
Any other comments? Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Hodge, thank you. A second?
Second.
Mr. Young, thank you. Any further comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Number 12.
yeah, the first one is the update on driver's education cars. We did discuss that a little more extensively Tuesday evening, and basically the update was that Nissan, who has been furnishing us with driver education cars, have taken the cars that they had furnished us with and are titling them to Rutherford County schools, so that they will not be directly providing cars to our driver's education program after this. It was a corporate move on their part, but they have generously given us the cars and the title with that. The other side of it being, it certainly will be a budget items to purchase, update driver's ed cars, maintenance and repair of those cars going forward.
This hasn't come up yet, but at some point, someone may contemplate, can our student auto mechanics CTE classes help us out with the maintenance of those vehicles? As those vehicles are going to be out on the road and there's a liability concern there, I would just raise that to the director, that we think carefully as we develop administrative procedures for working through those.
Any other comment? We don't need any other action on that, do we?
There's no action.
Okay. B.
B is the 2017-18 budget amendment for the Signal High edition. The school board would like to add 2 of the alternates included in the R.G. Anderson Incorporated's bid for Siegel High addition to this project. Alternate number 1 is for a lecture amphitheater and additional classroom for $1,440,000. Alternate number 2 is to replace the baseball field lights with LED lighting, $194,000. The school board is proposing a transfer of $1,634,000 from the general purpose school unassigned fund balance so that these shared funds can be used to internally fund this part of the Siegel High addition project until Rutherford County goes to the bond market for secondary education funds. At this time, this $1,634,000 would become available for K through 6th grade projects. The general purpose school unassigned fund balance is $30,188,139, or 8.275% of the 2017-18 general purpose school budget. The school board requests that the county commission increase the construction budget for the Siegel High addition project by this $1,634,000 and use this $1,634,000 transfer to internally fund the shortfall for the Siegel High addition construction contract. Recommend approval. The motion is to transfer $1,634,000 from the general purpose school unassigned fund balance to the school building program, Fund 177, in order to internally fund alternates 1 and 2 for Siegel High addition construction contract, and to ask the Rutherford County Commission to increase the construction budget for Siegel High addition by this amount as presented.
Comments, questions from board members?
My first question is, as a matter of procedure, in our September 20th meeting, we had a motion on this topic, and sometimes it's appropriate that we have to rescind a motion in order to make a different motion. Is there any reason that that may be necessary here?
Mr. Sandy?
And this was, while I was trying to communicate with email and all, the motion that was passed did not, the $1.5 million figure matched neither alternate. So that is why, when I got back and after talking to Mr. Odom and Ms. Michaels and Mr. Clardy, that is why we wrote this up this way, just wanting that clarification for what the intent of the board was.
This was also awarding the contract to R.G. Anderson.
Right,
For the
which
bid.
you awarded the base contract, but this is,
Right. But in September 20th, there was a
Right.
second motion, and you're right, it was for 1.5 million. The minutes reflect 1.6, but the motion was for 1.5 million. My concern is, what is the status of that action? Is it necessary to rescind that action before we take this action?
I hope not, because the contract's already written on it.
Mr. Eden?
Mr. Hawley, tell me what motion you're thinking that may need to be rescinded specifically.
Mr. S. just made a motion in the September 20th meeting that was after the R.G. Anderson motion. We approved R.G. Anderson for the construction of the addition at Siegel High School. After that, a separate motion was made. I believe it was seconded by Mr. Blair. And that motion was to take these two amendments that we're talking about right now and pursue them. And as such, get the $1.5 million and make these things happen, because it is obviously less expensive to make that happen in the course of this other construction project rather than at a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, go back and try and do it at that time. That motion was made and it was passed unanimously. Is that motion in conflict with this, which is a 1.6 motion that seems very similar, but it is specifically saying, and we will fund it by taking it out of unassigned fund balance?
Yeah, I don't see a conflict between the two motions. I don't see there's a need to rescind the prior motion based on what you're saying the prior motion was. So I think that it would be appropriate for the board, if it wants to take up this motion tonight, to go ahead and take it up if it chooses to do so.
Okay.
So I don't think there's a need to rescind the prior action on the base underlying bid of the 1.5.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Moore.
If Mr. Hall, thank you. If Mr. Holiday's finished with his remarks, I do want to express some thoughts and have some conversation about the second request on this, that being that of the funding of the Siegel High new baseball field lights. We brought it up on Tuesday. Of course, I did bring it up with concern about why we'd be spending $200,000 for this particular endeavor. It's a lot of money. It's almost $200,000. And I understand, or the responses I got back was that the dark spaces and the lighting on the field presented safety issues. I was unconvinced Tuesday night, and I'm actually even more unconvinced tonight. It's a lot of money. I mean, this coming out of ending fund balance money that's, at least in my opinion, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, should be for true emergencies and things that have to be funded that were totally unexpected. So I did a little research of my own today. I'm even more unconvinced tonight than I was on Tuesday night at our work session. I've spoken with several individuals in the community, individuals that I will say their resume qualifies them to speak to this particular issue, I think, much, much more than certainly any of us here on the board. And the responses I got back were essentially that they really didn't see the safety issue. And these are people, too, that were familiar with the Siegel Field. And maybe I should preface all this by saying, too, in the event that anybody in our audience thinks that I'm the lone female up here on the board that maybe doesn't like sports and doesn't want to spend money on that, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm a baseball mom. Have two sons that have been up all the way through high school baseball, so I've spent countless hours out at baseball fields watching games. And when I think about safety, obviously, I think first about the players and what could happen from a situation like this. Well, first of all, baseball is historically a very, very low injury sport, certainly when you compare it to ones like football and so on. And when you look at the type of injuries, or at least the ones I've seen occur on baseball fields in the past, if we're talking about it from a perspective of whether this dark spot and trouble with visibility, it's just as likely that the same kind of incident could happen because the sun's so bright during a noon game that it blinds a player. And I'm really unconvinced that we need to spend this money. I'm a bit disappointed, quite frankly, that this was put on the agenda to spend this kind of money with no offer of any other alternatives that might have been explored that might be able to fix this problem and cost the system less money. I also think about our schools, first of all, that Siegel is one of our newer facilities. So I have the question of how did this happen to begin with? Obviously, it's been a problem for a while, but it's just now coming in front of the board. I think about other high school baseball fields in town that are much, much older than this facility that I question, well, what is the status of their lights as well? And if we approve this, what's going to stop the flow of requests that might start coming in from other schools that, well, we want these LED lights to make our field safe as well. We have two that I know of for sure, possibly more, high school baseball fields here in this county that still have their lights on wooden poles, not metal. And there was an incident several years ago, I'm not sure if anybody here is aware of, that one of those poles crumbled and the light and the whole pole came crashing down. My understanding is that it may have been due to termites that got into that wood. So when I think about that, and thankfully it happened apparently at a time that there was no one on the field, it wasn't being utilized. But if that had happened, it had been one of the poles that was close to the bleachers or the dugout or the concession stand, what kind of injuries could have resulted from something like that. So, you know, my proposal this evening, quite frankly, would be to propose another, that we postpone this item until we've had a chance to do further research. I do see that there's an email here that's been brought forth where there's an opinion, I guess, on the light levels and so on and so forth, but I'm still unconvinced.
Yes, sir. I'm not a safety expert by no means. I had to depend on what we hear at the board meeting. But I also understood that this is a cost savings, that this could pay for itself over the course of the time. will this 200,000 come back to the school board? Is that not correct?
We have looked at them and included those in some previous proposals on changing everything to LEDs in the system. So there's big bucks that go out when the lights are on, and many times there's lights on even when they're not playing and having certain things going on. So I don't know what the savings are, but we've been told from 2 or 3 different companies that the savings would be significant and that they would pay for themselves. I don't know, even though I know they were late. They were within the group of lights where the payback would be from 5 to 7 years. Now, that's the entire system averaged together. So I don't know what specifically the savings would be on those. But if we change them all out throughout the system, they would pay for themselves in 5 to 7 years.
And that's been our goal to do that as a school board, right? To
Yes, I'm currently trying to find some funding for that through EESI. And also I have a group of mechanical, electrical engineers working on requests for proposal to try to get, to interview some people to just get what their savings would be exactly.
Mr. Hodge?
Would this, based on this 192,000, would that be something you'd estimate every school would have to have? That kind of money, or?
It would just take a total survey to see.
But this, I take it this is probably just lights only, not poles like Ms. Moore was talking about?
No, it would be changing out the wiring and the lighting. And because the field is finished, there'll be a lot of repair involved in getting the field back into shape after rewiring some things and those types of things. Anytime that we do a project, we always try to, for instance, in Laverne High School concession and Smyrna High School concession, we would look at probably the ball field, at the football field to check that out, as you suggested the other day. But when we're trying to do these projects, we always look for some way to take care of some of the other problems that are throughout the system also. So we get a lot of work done in that way. We saw many times we solve problems that are existing that would otherwise not be solved within the construction projects that we do.
I guess I got 2 more questions, I guess. In these spots that are dead, what I call dead spots or whatever, have you actually had your people or outside source actually do this study, or are we going by what we got here?
We went by what Mr. Creasy forwarded to us on the studies that they had done.
So we haven't did anything ourselves?
We haven't gone out and studied it. I know that the mechanical and electrical engineers designed the system based on the light levels that were found during this study, I think, to resolve it. But as far, I don't know if they went out and actually took levels or what they did.
So I guess what we're looking at here is basically what they gave us.
Yes, what came from the high school.
Okay. I guess my last question is, guess would be probably Mr. Reed, I guess. How much liability are we sitting here with right now, or are we?
Well, to the extent if the field is too dark to play on, or it causes dangerous conditions, there is some exposure for liability there, but I would not rate it as high, because it is a baseball game sport, so this type of activity you don't have a high risk of liability for. But to the extent if the board has noticed there's some deficiency there and we don't address it after we studied it and looked at it, then yeah, that could be a liability to the board. I don't know if you've got enough data really before you tonight to know really how much exposure you have in regards to it, because I don't know from what I've heard how much further study there's been out there with respect to the field. But if there is a dangerous condition reported to you by the principal of the school, that is some sort of notice that could expose you to some liability of some nature, though I would not rate it as high in this case.
Anyone else have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of other questions, if none of the other board members have anything.
I'll follow.
Okay, Mr. Clardy, the situation with these lights and it being described as dangerous, how long have these lights been deficient, to the best of our knowledge? Because there have been a lot of baseball games played out there at night.
I have assumed they've been deficient since they were installed. Of course, they were installed when I got here.
Which was?
2004, maybe.
So we've been playing with deficient lights on that field for more than 10 years, and this is the first time it's ever come up?
I've known of the problem probably for 5 or 6 years.
Okay, thank
A
you.
little history, and I can't remember exactly, and I apologize for that, but sometime in the late spring or early summer, Coach Revis, who is the only coach they've ever had, emailed me about what he thought was a dangerous situation with his lighting. And he had what you see before you to back that up. I emailed him back immediately and called Mr. Clardy immediately, and I told Coach Revis, I said, so it must have been late May or early June, and I apologize for not remembering the time. But I told him that our budget had been submitted and approved, and that, to my knowledge, we didn't have any money to do anything about his problem. Of course, he wasn't playing. The season was long over. And told him that I would get in touch with Mr. Clardy on this matter, which I did. But in the meantime, of course, well, we had this material right here, and it has gotten to this point where it's time to do something, I think, about it. And Mr. Clardy and I, and he's being very nice, but as he always is, but we tried to kind of piece it together as to what had happened. I wasn't here on the board at that time, and he wasn't in Rutherford County school system either. But we think that they've been there since the very beginning, and they just put up with it. But now that this testing has happened, and we know that it is substandard lighting, and I think, frankly, certainly a serious, I think, a problem. This is kind of ironic, I think, what I'm about to say, and I don't mean this in any kind of threatening tone here at all. And so please don't take it that way. But we have admitted, and I think correctly, that this is I don't know if we can say hazardous, but a definite safety issue. I'll just put it that way. And if we don't do something about it, make some sort of plans to do something about it, my motion will be, and I'll take the gavel down to Mr. Estes. My motion will be that we close that field, and you know what we'll do? I don't know if that'll pass or not, but if it does, we'll have to fix it. which is exactly what this is proposing in the first place. Now, if you want to seriously sit there and tell me that this is not a safety issue, okay.
Mr. Carter, you said this was already under contract. We had this amount.
No, the base contract was written. I think I misunderstood the question that Mr. Holliday posed. But the base bid and a couple of the other alternatives were in the contract that had already been forwarded to the general contractor. So these would both be written as change orders to that contract once they were funded.
I wanted to ask, what is the year that Siegel was built?
I think it's 2003. It might have opened in 2003.
And I wasn't clear, we had some discussion about this, but are we changing the poles at Siegel High School as part of this?
I don't think we are.
Okay.
I need to look and see, but I've never, I need to look at
Well,
the specifications exactly.
I'm looking at the email that was given to us here, and one of the things that's said is the low B-pole heights in combination with black visors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it leads me to believe, and we talked on Tuesday evening about how community concerns were part of what we did and such, and if the pole heights,
So, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I can find out, but I would agree with what you said. that
Okay.
It's possibly being changed, more than likely.
The only other thing that I would highlight is this motion is concerning two things. We're taking a lot of time, talking about the lights, and that 200,000 is certainly significant. The 1.4 million for the lecture amphitheater and additional classrooms is certainly valid and appropriate. I do want to clarify, and I asked this question on the September 20th evening, but I'm going to say it again here. It was suggested that we are doing this in part for equity among the offerings in our high schools, and that Siegel may be the only high school that doesn't have one of these auditorium classrooms. I pointed out September 20th, and I'll point out again, this auditorium type classroom, amphitheater type lecture hall is not present at Central, nor is it present at Smyrna or Laverne. So if our goal is equity, we still have work to do.
I'm gonna, like to make one more comment, and then I promise I will stop. But when we talk about the liability issue, and Mr. Chairman, I totally understand and get what you're saying, and I'm always concerned, obviously, about safety and liability. But when we talk about safety and liability on our ball fields and our sports fields out there, there's always going to be some of that there. And I think with this particular situation, I keep thinking back to the board meetings where we had some very, very heavy conversations about repairs that needed to be done at the Laverne High School football field. It was either Laverne or Smyrna. I think it was Laverne. If you'll recall, the bleachers and the restrooms. And we struggled because everyone on the board, and there was lots of evidence that was presented, we even went out and toured the facility, that there were significant safety risks if we didn't get those issues fixed. And I remember when we went in front of the county commission to ask for the money to do that, one of our county commissioners on the health and ed committee basically said that it wasn't going to happen on his watch that we were going to spend any money to fix ball field problems when we still needed classrooms and still had portables on our school property. So I would just remind everyone of that, and again, just think carefully about fiscal responsibility here, because I can't support this.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
on the lights, just going by the foot candle power that they have given us, the infield's supposed to be at 50, it's 32. Now, if it was 42 or 45, that wouldn't make a whole lot of difference, but we're almost at half of what it should be. and the outfield is supposed to be 30 and it's at 21, so it's at 3/4 of what it's supposed to be. You know, that's a pretty big problem if you're trying to field a ball in the dark. I think that we need to fix that. This problem's been there probably since the school was open, just like everybody said. I understand we need to save money everywhere we can, but it's like Mr. Jordan said, if we're gonna have to shut the field down, then we'd have to fix them anyway.
I don't think we have a choice on that if this doesn't pass. Now, if it doesn't, you know, every board member's got their own opinion and their own vote. They can do as they wish. The Smyrna and Laverne problem with concession stands in the restrooms, that you all have sent to the county commission. I think Mr. Howell is right. I believe he used the term 8 years. I believe that's correct. And I was on Health and Ed. As a matter of fact, I was chairman. And I voted for that every single time that it came up. Every time. And I'll vote for it next week, or whenever it is, whenever our meeting is, 25th. Our building program is. We have voted here since I've been here, and you all before that, but I think it's been, I don't really remember, but I think it's been unanimous every time. And I know Mr. Hodge made a terrific talk one night about why this was necessary, why we need to do this. It has failed for whatever reason to get through the county commission. I don't remember all the cases. It seemed like to me it did get through Health and Ed a time or two, and Budget Committee shut it down. I don't really remember exactly what happened all 8 times. But even though it is, I think that's a safety issue, Ms. Moore. I don't think there's any question. You're exactly correct. However, this is the one that's in front of us now, not that. And if that one comes up again, let's get behind it and ask again for funding for that. I think I've probably said enough.
I'll just make one more comment. You are correct. Mr. Holliday said also, it's probably been 8 years. I've pushed for that thing since day one. Mr. Carty knows it. And matter of fact, before this meeting, I went in and had a conversation with him, trying to get some kind of what you call guarantee or whatever that Smyrna and Laverne are going to be on the radar hopefully for next year, and I asked him to also look at their lighting situations on both those complexes, and he's got it on his radar. So I did have a conversation with him this afternoon on that, because that's a concern of mine.
We had some allies too on the county commission on that. I know Rhonda Allen, who at that time I believe had a son playing football, I believe, at Smyrna High School. And she was at every game. And she echoed that and spoke to that in the Health and Ed Committee. But still, for whatever reason, I'm sure it's the money, which is a lot more than this, of course. But it just never has gotten traction. And I really don't understand why. I really do not. Mr. Party?
I know that when we started this process about 7 or 8 years ago trying to rectify that issue, those buildings were $250,000 a piece. I have refigured those for our next building, and now we're at $3 million. They're $1.5 million a piece. And of course the scope changed a little bit because we reworked the location. Yeah, the total was 904,000. Now we're
2009.
Now we're at 3,015,000. So it needs to be resolved, and we have this now set in here in our program just as a recommendation to the board coming up for the 2019 year. Of course, at your pleasure, you're able to change that to 2018 or whatever you want to do when we bring it forth to you. But I do believe these budgets are set such that if we use the money correctly, we may be able to rectify some of those lighting issues and different things.
One thing that did happen with the Smyrna Laverne thing, and I know we're not really talking about that necessarily, but I guess we are, aren't we? And how it relates as a safety issue. But I know we had, and y'all will probably remember better than I do, but we had part of that process was extra seating also. And Mr. Clark, you just keep nodding yes if I'm right. We had to cut that part out because it was so expensive. But we did get handicap seats for both stadiums, did we not? So, and that's done, and that's been done.
Yes, sir.
3 or 4 years. But we're still looking for concession stands and restrooms on both sides. I don't know which stadium was worse, but if worse is the right term, but I would say Laverne maybe. It may be a little bit worse, but it's not good.
I think you could go ahead, you understand the problem. I think you should go ahead and define that publicly right now, what the issue is that we're having at those two with these big home games that requires this to be done.
Well, anybody is willing to jump in here and correct me, and I would welcome it. And let me try to do as you ask. We have a situation that has not been rectified at both Smyrna and Laverne, where the visiting crowd, and in most cases, if they want to use the restroom or they want to go to a concession stand, and maybe not a temporary concession stand, they have to go take a pretty long walk and go to the other side of the field. And particularly at Smyrna, the crowds almost mingle. And, well, not almost. I wish Mr. Blair was here. But I think all of you know, we've been down there, we've toured it. And they come right around and they go through each other. Well, at that time, when this first came up, we had Riverdale and Smyrna that were both really good. And they had like 3 battles there, 3 years in a row. And really, I was there, probably for all 3 of them on the sideline, and I, kind of worried, really. But it was inconvenient for the people and the fans and so forth, and we thought, and I'll speak for Wayne, he's not here, hopefully he has a granddaughter by this time, that's why he's not present, he's with his daughter. But he has really spoken for this, that he thought it was a dangerous situation, and that fans sometimes swell it was a dangerous situation. Now, if anybody wants to add anything to that, feel free to jump right in here.
Let me just say that I think I've heard the term tinderbox for violence applied to those situations. So it's something that's needed, that needs to be addressed.
Well, I guess to me that would beg the question too then, because we were definitely all in agreement that that was a big enough safety hazard and issue that it needed to be done, and I think we practically did everything but get down and beg for the funding to fix those issues. So given the fact that we haven't, and we still have that there, but we haven't shut down those football fields from playing games on it.
Another issue that I'll raise is the seating capacity for the visiting team is once again an issue of equity. At the other stadiums throughout the county, the seating capacity for the visiting team is much larger than it is either at Smyrna or Laverne. And so not only just for the sake of concessions or for bathroom facilities, but sometimes even just to watch the game. We have visiting fans that are seated on the home side, and keep in mind that particularly in Laverne, sometimes the visiting team could be Cane Ridge or Antioch, which are just as fierce rivals and environments as well. One difference about what we're talking about this evening versus what we've always talked about with the Smyrna and Laverne circumstances is kind of like we discussed it September 20th. We talked about that we would go and plead to the county commission, our funding body, and say, please provide us the funds we need to address the situation. The difference is in this motion, in this situation, we are suggesting to the county commission, will you please allow us to use our savings account and address this situation? That's a circumstance that makes this a little bit different. The last thing is, as Mr. Estes raised, the light levels are something that I was concerned about as well. So I took a look at that, and the recommended light levels that we're currently referencing were a revision by TSSAA in the spring of 2016. I am not familiar with what they were before then, and whether or not what we originally installed in 2003 was at specification or within compliance or recommended. But it does still say in the lighting standards that the expected life cycle for stadium lighting is 25 years. Therefore, what we installed in 2003, we could defend that it has a 25-year light cycle to 2028 before we would reasonably bring it to the current standards that were put in place in 2016.
I just wanted to add also that we have planned, when we rebid this, the Laverne and Smyrna stadium concession, that we would put in as an alternate the seating. We plan to do that already, and then at that time you'll have a menu to pick from on those things.
Let's narrow our focus back to the recommended motion here in front of us.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve.
Seconded by Mr. Young. Further comments?
Discussion just specifically on this. Mr. Sandvig, what is the recommendation for our unassigned fund balance to be at?
The legal requirement is 3. Lisa Nolan and I are more comfortable with that 4.5 or higher range. Given that we are trying to prepare to open Rockvale High School, I'd like to keep it more in the 6% range. My personal preference, which we have lots of latitude left to stay at that.
You have carefully and correctly given us that we are currently at 8.275% with our unassigned fund balance, and that is in excess of any of the numbers that you just shared with us. If this board were to pass this motion this evening, then County Commission, what we're doing is we're taking away our ability to be able to raise, to open Rockvale High School. We're chipping away at that ability because we're taking a correct and prudent measure to make something happen in concert with a construction project that's going on. These projects that perhaps inevitably would be completed will be completed for less money because we're doing this. We discussed on Tuesday night that we will at some point come back to the county commission and say, will you restore these funds back to our general purpose unassigned fund balance? And I certainly hope that the county commission will understand the wisdom that a board may choose to use to make these improvements at the absolute lowest cost possible.
Did we not already set aside over $2 million for Rockvale? 2.5 million, and we're looking at 5?
Yes.
2.5, was part of that motion to do 2.5 next year too, or Was there any such motion made?
We did not make such a
Okay.
motion, but that's why that's
1
one
year.
of the reasons I'm saying if we stay in that 6% range, we should be in good shape for that. Yeah, and if I may. This just drops us to about 7.83%. We still have some latitude, which we're getting to when we're at our building program meeting next week as we're discussing other items. One thing for us to always keep in mind is under normal conditions, and the commission has already finalized their borrowing hopefully for this fiscal year. They gave the county mayor and Ms. Nolan the authority when our financial advisors think rates are at the best point to strike to go ahead and do the borrowing. So there was never any way that we could get this 1.6 million added to this year's borrowing. That's why we have to do some kind of temporary borrowing package in order to get it this year. But we have been doing that for the last couple of years as fund balance and our revenue stream has improved. So,
We have a motion made and properly seconded. The board is reluctant to go on until I make sure that we have, the chair is, that we make sure that everyone's been heard here if there's another comment or suggestion. Ms. Michaels, I think you better call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Michaels. Thank you, Board. Transportation.
Okay, this is for information only, number 13. As a follow-up to the Motorola service contract, which was approved at the last board meeting, systems technicians did preventive maintenance on the MTR 3000 base station during fall break. We were advised of the following: no issues with the antenna or the line out to the tower. The MTR 3000 base station needs some minor tuning, but nothing that would be impacting system operation in a major way. They did find high noise on the telco connection, the T1 between our building and the tower site. According to the technician, this would inject noise into the base station and therefore impact coverage. Motorola will have a team working on a point-to-point hop to eliminate the T1, and a full report will follow at a later date. Motorola ran a predictive coverage on the location of the Tiger Hill Tower and the county. As expected, the single site is not sufficient to cover the county, even using 50-watt mobile radios in the field. You can see on the map, and there is a map that's on your tab attachment, we would expect to see coverage issues in Laverne, Eagleville, Milton, Las Casas, etc. What the map shows is the green area would expect to receive and transmit 95% of the time, and the area not colored in means you would have a successful transmission less than 95% of the time, but not zero. So some areas not colored in may still be perfectly acceptable. We also should remember that Motorola is recommending a preventive maintenance on all school bus mobile radios once a year to ensure optimal performance. If left unattended, radios can drift off frequency, introduce more noise, and suffer other correctable issues that directly impact individual receive and transmit performance.
Any questions? There's no motion here.
Is it possible for us to show the map that's in the tab on the screen?
Matt can, I think, with the tab.
It's page 58, which is 58 of 58. I just thought it was particularly noteworthy, the areas of Eagleville, and then out there toward Milton, and then once again up in Smyrna and Laverne. That's where our real deficient coverage is. And in that Smyrna Laverne area, because of Murfreesboro City Schools, and this is a strange occurrence, but because of Murfreesboro City Schools and that we don't have as many elementary schools in the center of the county because of the existence of Murfreesboro City Schools, 20 of our 47 schools are in the Smyrna Laverne area. And it's one of the places where we have some of our most deficient coverage. So I'm glad we're certainly taking a look at this and look forward to the solutions that they'll suggest.
Any other comments? Fourteen.
14 is again for information only. The appointment to the County Audit Committee will be Mr. Coy Young. The Federal Relations Network, FRN member, is Mr. Aaron Holliday. The Tennessee Legislative Network, the TLN member, is Ms. Lisa Moore. The Policy Committee will be Mr. Jeff Jordan, Chairman, Mr. Jim Estes, Vice Chairman, Wayne Blair, Terry Hodge, Aaron Holliday, Lisa Moore, Coy Young, Kenneth Curley, Bill Tollett, Kim Franklin, Joan Scales Simmons, Kay Martin, Claudia Belden, Regina Harvey, Don Odom, Lauren Bush, and Jeff Reed.
We thank Mr. Young, Mr. Holliday, and Ms. Moore for their service, and certainly to the Policy Committee. Number 15.
Number 15 is collaborative conferencing request, and I believe we have a presentation from Ms. Crowell this evening. If you would like to step up, this is pursuant to the collaborative conferencing law that the legislature passed.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to address you today. I am here on behalf of over 1,000 educators in Rutherford County to present you with a petition of over 1,000 signatures to requesting the initiation of collaborative conferencing with the Rutherford County Board of Education. So I have in this box the petition, and I hope you find that it meets the guidelines pursuant in TCA 495605B1. So on behalf of Rutherford Education Association, I look forward to taking the next steps with you in the collaborative conferencing process with the Special Questions Committee and the confidential poll. And I'm going to keep it short unless you have any questions for me.
Required 15%. If she has over 1,000, we probably made the 15% with that.
Yes. So in here I have the petitions. They are separated by school and they're alphabetized for you if you wanted to actually look to make sure they're all correct. I'm just going to leave them here.
Ms. Michaels, yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Crowell.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Insurance update?
That's a follow-up on the question that was asked on Tuesday about the percentage increase in the categories of the insurance. And Mr. Sandwich prepared a document. Do you want to say anything about that, Mr. Sandwich?
This is the format I work with insurance in the budget, so it's laid out differently. The first 3 blocks of data, that would be a certified or classified employee with children, no spouse covered. And that block has, I think, yellow shading, 9%, 20%, and 5%. Those were the percentage increases for each. The copay plan, 20% for the deductible plan, 5% for the HRA plan. So there are 4 blocks of 3 columns each. With our the way we're doing the $30 wellness as a reduction in premium, next year this doubles as far as number of rows and columns. That will be fun, yeah. but the bottom row shows you the percentage increase, because we also are still shifting this year. For 2018, we are shifting from 84% employer paid to 83%. The commission voted 7 years ago to start dropping 1% a year, but on the HRA plan, we wanted to maintain that price advantage. So this year we did not drop the HRA employer pay percentage. We are paying less as an employer toward the employees who opt for that plan than we are for the other plans. We wanted to keep some financial incentive there. So that is why in the first column, they've got the 9% increase for the co-pay plan. When you throw in that 1% point shift, it becomes a 15.8% increase. Ms. Street and I were emailing back and forth today, and as we both agreed, we will be glad when this drops, when it hits the 80. That will stabilize our rates somewhat. But this was a long-term vote that the commission took to move this way. And we still, there are systems, we are only required to pay 45%, and there are plenty of systems out there when you get to dependent coverage who only pay 60%. Our 80% will still be a very good number, and more than competitive with some other systems around us.
Mr. Floody, a question on that. I think that 1% decrease in funding per year must have happened before my time. I don't remember hearing it talked about before. Just out of curiosity, is that capped? You say 1% per year. Is there a cap on it?
It'll drop until it hits 80.
Okay.
We were at 90.
So it's not supposed to go any lower
No,
than 80?
ma'am. No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Great, thank you.
They can vote again.
Yeah,
I'm just telling you.
they will.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Mr. Estes, you okay? Does this meet your requirements from Tuesday night?
Yes, sir.
Explains your figures. That bottom row is your actual increase overall, with all taken out.
Well, there's one of those plans I'd get out of.
Yeah. Any other comment from board members on insurance? Director's update. Anything?
The only thing I would say tonight, just keep your ears attuned till tomorrow. Sometime tomorrow at 12 o'clock, the state is saying they will release the reward schools identified, which is basically top 5%, either for progress or overall achievement. And also they will assign each school district a designation. So highest being exemplary, down to, I forget what the bottom one is, the focus and that sort of thing that they have at the bottom end. Priority, right, that is the lowest. So we'll get some designations tomorrow at noon. I think we'll do pretty well with the value added and the things that we saw. I'm certainly not expecting to be on that bottom end.
Ms. Moore, anything from TLN? If there are no questions for the director?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And actually, I gave all of you a copy of an agenda of a House Education. It's actually a joint meeting that's going to be taking place next week. And I thought it was particularly noteworthy because there is on that agenda for the first day, it's actually scheduled for 2 days, Tuesday the 24th and Wednesday the 25th. The Tuesday session starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This was designed, I think, originally, and it is, a meeting of those committees to discuss the things that came out of their summer study issues and items that had come up. But as everybody knows, and we talked about the other night, been a lot of press about the issues with testing again this year and the testing vendor. And Speaker Beth Harwell had come out, and there were news releases about it all over, about calling for hearings on this. So I think to kind of dovetail with that, they added to the agenda to have a presentation and conversation about 10 Ready and about the testing issues. So that's taking place on that first day. I do plan to be there that day. And you'll see, I thought it was also noteworthy, that on the agenda for that first day, they're also going to be talking about BEP funding, as well as what they're calling a portfolio model of teacher evaluations, which I know is something else that's been of a lot of concern. So I plan to be there, and I'll have a full report our next board meeting.
They've already implemented the portfolio for this year, required for PK teachers and kindergarten teachers. Some thoughts they may go to first grade, second grade in subsequent years. Now, they also have some portfolios for specialized positions across the state too, like that may not fit the traditional evaluation model.
Any questions for Ms. Moore? She's about to have a very busy time. State legislature is
Gearing up.
preparing themselves, I guess. Mr. Holliday, anything?
Well, I'll just add to comments from Tuesday night that as candidates continue to announce for congressional races, and as Senator Corker has indicated that he will not run, those that will run for the U.S. Senate, it's important that we find out who these people are and what their position is on education, and make sure that with Betsy DeVos leading the Department of Education, that we have strong legislative support for public education and a perspective that is cautious about charters and absolutely against vouchers.
Well put, sir. Any questions for Mr. Holliday? General discussion by board members. Well, okay, I guess I'll go. We did hear from Ms. Duffield of the Chamber of Commerce. I assume that email came to everybody. I don't really know whether it went to everybody or not, but it did. She's checking on the date for us to go to Knoxville on STEM. I believe that was January 16th, so might ought to leave that open until we hear back from her. The next time we meet is the five-year building plan, which is next Wednesday, 5 o'clock. I have heard nothing so far from Mr. Campbell about our meeting with the legislators. I hope to hear perhaps by the next time that we get together. Maybe I'll know something next week. And that's all I have. Does anyone else have items for general discussion?
Mr. Jordan, I didn't think to put this out there, but I will say that the board attended a district workshop with other school boards, and some of the topics that were covered had to do with collaborative conferencing, and we were one of the only boards that were present there who have a memorandum of understanding with our teachers. And that is not required under the new laws, and we have enjoyed that for the past 3 years, and it's indicative of the excellent cooperative relationship that the board has with our educators. We certainly value them, and we are starting the process this evening with REA bringing these petitions toward another season of having their input and considering that carefully. So for all of our teachers where in the classrooms, this board appreciates you and the job that you do.
Anything else, general discussion by board members? I see the next thing is adjournment, and I know how you hate to get to that point. Okay, I smiled when I said that. Is there anything else? Appreciate the input. We are adjourned.